Okay, so I think we should start. So welcome to everyone's here and people who will be seeing this afterwards in the recording. This will be the first Helena Avelar seminar, which is the renaming in honor of Helena of the seminar on ancient astronomy, the permanent seminar on ancient astronomy. Was the correct name. And this renaming is to honor, of course, Helena's work and her participation also in the seminar. And we're going to include, because of this, a little bit more on the history of astrology, which was already a part of the seminar before, but now it'll have a greater part in all of this. So the seminar is organized by the Faculty of Sciences in the Interuniversitary Center for the History of Sciences and Technology, by Luis Tirpicus, Samuel Gessner, and me. And it intends to discuss particularities of the history of astronomy and astrology, so the history of the science of the stars in its technical aspect, its practical aspects. So although earlier Dorian, who is our guest for today, was telling us it is lots are an arcane technique, but it is exactly these specific topics and these specific techniques that we are interested in discussing in the seminar, both from the astronomical or the astrological point of view, or the connection between the two, as it is in most cases. So I officially welcome Dorian Gieseler Greenbaum. Welcome to the seminar as our first official guest in the new Helena Avelar seminar. Dorian is a well-known historian of astrology. Her work, she studied in the Warburg Institute under Charles Burnett, and her work has been published. The PhD thesis has been published in the title "The Daimon in Hellenistic Astrology: Origins and Influence," and she has also done several works on the history of astrology, particularly on the classical period, so the Greek astrology, the Hellenistic period, which is one of her special points of research. Dorian is also teaching at the University of Wales, Trinity St. David, currently in the postgraduate program. So welcome, Dorian. We're looking forward to hear you speak about this more arcane doctrine of the lots, at least in historical point of view. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Luis, for that really lovely introduction. I'm very honored to be the first speaker in this renamed seminar series for our dear friend and colleague, Helena. I'm going to then, I think, share my screen now, and hopefully, yes. You should be able to see. Yes, excellent. So I'm going to, there we are. Okay, can I ask you, Luis, just to keep an eye on the chat box as I'm speaking, if somebody has a particularly important thing to say, please do, interrupt. But I will get started for now. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today to talk to you all about a particular passion of mine, which is lots as they are used in astrological theory and practice. This is the idea of a lot, I don't think is going to be foreign to anyone here who isn't aware of the Irish sweepstakes, for instance, or the many forms of lotteries that promise a rich payoff to the winner. How many school children have been involved in a lottery to determine what school they'll attend, for instance. And as you can see in one of these little snapshots, I can easily find the results of lotteries for affordable housing units in Boston, which is near where I live, or the lucky winners of tickets to popular concerts or shows. Shirley Jackson's famous and chilling short story, The Lottery, takes the concept in a horrifying direction. I won't be going there today, where the winner gets stoned to death. I know this because I played the unfortunate victim in an 8th grade school production. In short, lotteries are everywhere. And we know them well in modern culture. And it was no different in antiquity, though the lotteries were used for different purposes. So I'm going to begin my talk today by giving a little history of lots in ancient cultures, and then I will turn to their particular use in astrology, because we never or should never divorce doctrine and practice from its surrounding culture. So I will begin with just a couple of quotes. Even the gods are subject to lotteries. In this case, in Mesopotamia, Anu, Ea, and Enlil were given their kingdoms of heaven, water, and earth by lot in the myth of the flood. And in Greece, also, the gods Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades were allotted their portions of the different portions of the world by lot. And you see an example of this in the Iliad. In Athens, in the political arena, as Aristotle tells us in the Athenian constitution, many judicial practices were made by lots, and things like the selection of Greek archons and officials. Because of their random quality, they were seen as the fairest way to choose someone. But lots were not necessarily used for occupations that required certain skills. For example, generals were not chosen by lot. But we also see mention of lots in Plato in his dialogue on the laws, where he talks about choosing the lot and saying that though it allows everyone an equal chance, it does not always obtain the best person. And he talks about two kinds of equality. And by this, he means an arithmetical and a proportional equality. And he says that the one, which is the arithmetical one, employs the lot to give results in the to give even results in the distribution. But he says the truest and best form of equality, which is the proportional kind of equality, is what he calls the judgment of Zeus. And this gives in due measure to each according to nature. And it assigns in proportion, using the phrase katalogon in Greek, what is fitting to each. So this is assessment by quality, I guess you could say. And he says, when the arithmetical kind must be used, he says, we invoke God and good fortune in our prayers, and we beg that they themselves will direct the lot with a view to supreme judgment. So Plato is pointing out here the fact that casting lots might give one kind of equality, but not necessarily the best quality. And thus, when you're casting a lot, it's important to pray to Zeus and to good fortune to have the lot fall out so that the best is chosen. And so we see here chance linked with divinity in finding the outcome by lot. Proportional equality, this judgment of Zeus, is the most just equality, which allots on the basis of merit. But, Plato says, sometimes arithmetical equality, i.e. casting lots, must be used. And when that happens, we must then pray to Zeus and good fortune to influence the casting of the lot. And if you're wondering why I'm going on and on about proportion, as well as arithmetical techniques, stay tuned. I'll be talking about that when we get to astrology. Now, the other crucial text for the history of lots is the famous story of the myth of in Plato's Republic. And here on the screen, you'll see the text of what I'm going to be discussing. The myth comes in the last book of the Republic, in book 10, and the dialogue itself is Plato's vision and version of the ideal state. The myth has to do with reincarnation of souls into bodies, the lives they've lived already and the life that is about to come as they reincarnate. Some parts of this life are fated and some parts are not. And we will see the role of lots in all of this. It's told from the point of view of who is a soldier who has appeared on earth to be dead, but in fact wakes up, or his soul wakes up in a field filled with other souls that are waiting to be incarnated after a previous existence. And he has been chosen to be a witness to the process that they go through. So he watches as the souls are gathered together and addressed by a prophet who tells them what to expect as they go forward into a new incarnation. And this is quite a long quotation, and I'm just going to go on to another slide as well, but I just want to point out to you the connections in this story with things like chants and things like the Daimon and the use of lots in the story, and parts of fate that are involved in the story. So I'm just going to go quickly through the parts that I've put in bold type here. So once the souls have arrived, they go to Lachesis, who is one of the fates, one of the Moirai, whose name means the allotter. But first, a prophet arranges them all the souls in order, and he takes from the knees of Lachesis lots. The word in Greek is kleroi, and examples of lives, and he tells them that they are about to go into a new cycle of life. And he says, your daimon will not be allotted to you. Daimon for here, daimon for now, think something like a guardian angel, okay? Your daimon will not be allotted to you, but you'll choose your daimon and let him who draws the first lot have the first choice, and the life he chooses shall be his of necessity. So once you choose, you have that life, but you get the choice to do it. However, you have to choose in the order of the lot that you draw, okay? So he then scatters the lots among them all. Each soul picks up a lot that falls near him and obtains the order in which the soul will get to choose. And then the prophet places on the ground sample lives that they get to choose from. And there are many more lives than there are souls there, so that each soul can choose a good life if they so desire and if they choose wisely. But of course, the first person who chooses doesn't choose wisely, chooses a tyranny, chooses to be a tyrant. And instead of saying, oh, well, that's my fault, he's said before that God is not responsible for your choice, you are. He accuses chance and the diamonds and everything rather than himself. And because of the chance of the lot and his inexperience, many of the souls exchange a good destiny for an evil one or an evil for a good. But they get through the process, and once they've chosen all their lives, they then approach Lachesis in the order that the lottery assigns them. She sends them with the daimon, whom they have chosen to be the guardian of their lives and the fulfiller of the choice, and the daimon leads them to the other Moirai, to Clotho, and to atropos, who makes this process irreversible, and then they pass beneath the throne of necessity. So I think you can see here all of these concepts, the idea of the chance of the lot itself, the use of the lot in this, the role of the daimon, the connections with fate. I should also point out that chance and fortune are the same word in Greek, tyche or tyche. And all of these are going to figure in our look at astrology and the lots. And I'm going to turn now to the main event, lot doctrine in astrology. I'm going to begin just by giving you the words that are used in the texts that I'll be discussing today, which are in Greek and Latin. The first one is the Greek word kleros. You might have noticed that the same word, kleroi, is used in the myth of which means simply a lot or the casting of lots or something that is assigned by lot, but it can also mean a piece of land or a farm or an estate. And in English, we have that same kind of meaning. We can talk about our lot in life, or we can talk about, well, I decided to buy a house lot. I'm going to build a house, which is literally a piece of land on which you're going to build something, right? In Latin, the word sors has a lot of the same kinds of meanings. And like the English word lot, it can also have something to do with your fate or destiny or chance or fortune or condition. Pars, the third word that's used for lot in these astrological texts, is simply a portion, but can also mean a party or a faction or a side or a function, or again, with this sense of place, a place or a region. So those are the words that we're going to be encountering in our astrological journey through lot doctrine today. Some of you might be wondering, well, why have lots in astrology at all? I think their ubiquity in culture will lead any kind of practice to think about the ways to express itself, and astrology is not any different from any other of these kinds of topics. And in fact, lots are a very old technique, with evidence of their use in astrology from the earliest extant texts about astrology that date from the 2nd to 1st centuries CE in what we call pseudepigraphical material, meaning we don't really know who wrote it, associated with an Egyptian king called Nekepso and his priest Pedosiris. So lots are used as interpretive points for giving the astrologer information about clients and their lives. And we've seen the use of the lot now in philosophical and cultural contexts. So their use in astrology is existing in the same kind of frame. And indeed, it seems clear that astrology is drawing on the cultural views of lots in its own particular doctrine. And we will see a quote later that specifically makes this connection. It may seem as if the technique of lots is merely an adjunct to the more important interpretive tools of the planets, the zodiacal signs, and the places in which they fall in the chart. However, the different systems and groups of lots that we find in astrological techniques, the varied ways in which they're used, and the sheer number of lots employed over time in astrology for many different topics, and some become quite specific later on. And these tell us that they were not mere extras added on a whim, but in many ways were integral to the theory and practice of astrology. So, what is a lot in astrology? It is an arithmetical and proportional construct that links 3 points in the astrological chart. The lot is arithmetical in that it takes the arc between 2 points and adds or subtracts it from a third point. So that's just straightforward addition and subtraction, right? But it also creates a proportion between two different yet related things. The components that form the lot are usually planets in points 1 and point 2, and the ascendant as point 3. And the ascendant is the zodiacal sign and degree on the eastern horizon for the moment in time for which the chart is constructed. In natal astrology, the ascendant is arguably the most personal point in the chart because it's the moment of birth translated into zodiacal terminology. The longitudinal arc between two planets is usually projected from the ascendant to locate the position of the lot. And so these 3 points become connected in the position of the one lot. So we have 3 points all gathered together in one to form the lot. I should say that any 3 relevant points, and that is relevant to the topic of the lot, can be used to form a lot, but the combination of the 2 planets plus the ascendant is the most common form that lots take. So let's see how this works using the lot that is most commonly used in astrology, and that is the lot of fortune. It is formed using the arc between the sun and the moon, and then projected from the ascendant. Now, for those of you who are new to the mechanics of the astrological chart, I will provide you with a little diagram, a cheat sheet, as you will, maybe, to show the layout and the organization of the chart. So this is a circular diagram. Such diagrams were used in antiquity. And it orients the chart in both space and time, as you can see from the outer designations that I've written here. So here is the ascendant on the eastern horizon. It also denotes the sunrise point in the chart. So it has to do with things that are in the east, right? It is opposite, obviously, to sunset, which is the western horizon. And we have this horizontal division of the circle, and we also have a vertical division of the circle. So we have the culmination point, which is called the midheaven, which designates the direction south and noontime. And the lower culmination, called the lower midheaven, or the IC, Imum Coeli, which is the north and the time of around midnight. So when you place the planets in the chart, you're going to see, based on, for instance, where the sun is, whether the chart is happened in the day or happened at night. You can tell a lot about that, especially from the position of the sun. So let's see, what else do I want to say? You also will notice that I have put some names of these different divisions of the circle. There are 12, and they are called places in ancient astrology, and in modern astrology, they're often called houses, but they're each associated with different things. So the first house is associated, for instance, with life. And then we go through the other names, and I'll point out just a couple of these. First of all, we have a place of good fortune and bad fortune, and a place of good Daimon and bad Daimon. And you'll notice that these are opposite each other, and that is not by accident. And I've just been talking a little bit about fortune and Daimon, and this is all in that same vein here. I also want to point out that the division of the circle horizontally and vertically to create these 4 different, what we call angles, is very crucial to the whole mechanical way that we look at an astrological chart. And the angles are considered to be extremely important in interpretation in astrology. So if you have a planet in one of these angles, the first place, the fourth, the seventh, or the 10th, that's considered significant. Hopefully that will be enough to go on with for a little while. And I just want to point out one more thing. You'll note that the ascendant-descendant line is what marks the day from the night. So this is a difference that's really important in ancient astrology. So daytime is above this ascendant-descendant line, and nighttime is below it. Okay, so this is critical knowledge for constructing a lot, because the formula that you use to construct it, it depends on whether the chart is a daytime chart with the sun above the horizon or a nighttime chart with the sun below the horizon. So now let's insert some planets here that are used for the lot of fortune, and we'll note the zodiacal sign and degree of the ascendant and indicate the lot of fortune itself. And this is an example using a day chart, because as you'll see, the sun is above the horizon. So we find the lot of fortune by taking the arc from the sun to the moon by day, because the sun is the luminary of the day. So we're going to use the day formula here. If it were nighttime, we'd use the arc from the moon to the sun. And we take that arc, going in zodiacal order. The cheating way is to say, oh, well, that they're one sign apart. So if we're going to go from the sun to the moon and go in zodiacal order, they're 11 signs apart. So we go like this around 11 times from the ascendant. So if our ascendant is Scorpio, we're going to end up with the lot of fortune in Libra, which is the sign above Scorpio. But in this case, it's a 32-degree arc. And I won't say anything else, but you can just keep that also in mind. So by far, the most employed lots in Hellenistic astrology are the lot of fortune and the lot of Daimon. Again, keeping with our theme here. And so let me show you the lot of fortune and Daimon again in a day chart. And this, and here is the formula at the top, how you do it in a day chart and how you do it in a night chart. And you will see here that the lots are basically formed from the arc between the same two planets, the sun and the moon, and that effectively they form a mirror image from the ascendant. And they are symmetrical also from the ascendant. So this is important and interesting at the same time, because we can see in the popularity of these lots, which are the most used in practice, echoes of the philosophical texts that we have just looked at. And we can also see their proportionality in their distance from the ascendant. Should I ask at this point if anyone needs any clarifications? Okay, I don't hear any screams of dismay or anything, so I'll assume that you're following me. So we have this idea of the two lots of fortune and Daimon as showing their proportionality in their distance from the ascendant, and I'll give you a more stylized version of that, so that you can see how they are proportional and symmetrical. And this, of course, is going to echo the idea of proportionality that Plato talked about in the Laws, and the fact that the lots of fortune and Daimon are connected in this way echoes the ideas of chance, in Greek Tyche, which also means fortune, and the Daimon that we saw in the myth of Ur. And so the astrological construct is a visual image of these connections. I said before that the lots in astrology are both arithmetical and proportional, in that they take the arcs between 2 points and they add or subtract them from the ascendant, and in that they create a proportion between 2 different yet related things. And you can recall what Plato said about the arithmetical and proportional equality, that you're praying to Zeus and good fortune for the equality to be just. And so here we are applying that sun-moon proportion to the ascendant, which creates something very personal to the chart. And we're also showing how the sun and the moon relate to Daimon and fortune, because the lot of fortune is often associated with the moon, and the lot of Daimon is often associated with the sun. All right. Hopefully you're all with me still. I want to now turn to, I guess, a brief move through in the history of lots in Hellenistic astrology, the astrologers who write about these, and when they lived, the names of their works, and a brief description of what they did. As I said before, lots have been used in astrology from the earliest extant texts of Nekepso and Petasiris. I put their names in quotation marks because we don't really know what they are. And we also see the use of lots in both original documentary evidence, like charts on papyrus or charts on potsherds, ostraca, and literary chart examples. And these start in the evidence that we have in the early 1st century CE, and the use of lots in charts goes all the way through to the end of the 17th century, and infrequently after that until the late 20th century. So I'm concentrating here on authors from antiquity, just to give you a sense of the of how the history moves, right? So I've mentioned Nekepso and Petasiris. Manilius, who is a 1st century CE Roman author who wrote a poem called Astronomica, devotes a section of his book to the lot of fortune. Also in the 1st century, the work of Dorotheus of Sidon, who wrote a book called, again in verse, but we only have prose, well, we have some poetry fragments, but a lot of prose paraphrases of his work in Greek. And we also have a fuller Arabic version of his text, which is called the Carmen Astrologicum. And in this work, 22 lots are mentioned, though some of these may be interpolations because of the history of the text only existing in its fullest state in an Arabic version. Vettius Valens, who wrote in the 2nd century CE, is our premier source for lot technique. And he discusses 25 lots. The lots of fortune and Daimon are given extensive coverage throughout his work, but he does spend quite a lot of time, especially in book 2 of his treatise, The Anthologies, discussing a number of other lots, including what's one called the lot of exaltation, the lot of debt, theft, travel, marriage, father, mother, children, and siblings. He even uses the lots of fortune and Daimon to designate body parts, illness, and injuries in a chapter in book 2. A main focus for Valens is a particular group of lots called fortune, daimon, love, and necessity, whose meanings associate them with body, in the case of fortune, soul, spirit, and mental activity in the case of daimon, love and relationship in the case of love, and necessity and compulsion in the case of necessity, and whose formulae are such that all of the lots are related to each other and in fact form mirror images with one another. I will show you an illustration of this in a bit, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody is aware that he talks a lot about this particular group of lots. Now, we come to Claudius Ptolemy, whose work was so influential in the Middle Ages, and he is actually an outlier when it comes to lots. In his 2nd century CE astrological work, which is called the Tetrabiblos, he mentions only the lot of fortune, and fairly briefly at that, because he was interested in physical causation for the effectiveness of astrology. He rejects the night reversal for the lot of fortune. Remember, I said that the formula you use is based on whether the chart's cast for a daytime or a nighttime. And he only uses the lot of fortune in its day version, because he says the day formula, and he's right about this, this is accurate, the day formula gives the same proportion between the sun and the ascendant as between the moon and the lot of fortune, thus providing a physical basis to call the lot of fortune a lunar horoscope. That is the term he uses, thus providing a physical basis for the lot. He also points out that he doesn't, this is a quote, he does not like lots and numbers for which no cause can be reckoned. So he's not going to really play too much of a role in our subsequent discussions, because we have more interesting fish to fry, shall we say. By the 4th century CE, Julius Firmicus Maternus, who was a Sicilian lawyer and astrologer, mentions 26 lots in his Mathesis, an astrological manual, and he also uses this group of fortune, daimon, love, and necessity that is esteemed by Valens. But of course, because astrology is not straightforward and simple, he reverses Valens's formulas for love and necessity. Also in the 4th century, Paulus of Alexandria's Introduction to Astrology introduces a new group of lots called the Hermetic Lots. He also discusses other lots. These are a group of 7 lots associated with one of the 7 classical planets. And here astrologers will include the sun and moon, although they are not strictly speaking planets. Paulus is the first to mention these Hermetic lots, which do not appear in any text before the 4th century. The commentary on Paulus's introduction by the Neoplatonist Olympiodorus the Younger contains or includes around at least 100 lots. So you can see how the proliferation of lots is happening as we move through time. Hephaestion of Thebes, who wrote in the early 5th century CE, a book called Apotalismatica, relies on both Dorotheus and on Ptolemy. And a lot of our Greek fragments of Dorotheus come from him. But his use of lots reflects the former because of what Ptolemy felt about the lots. So, and he also, among other lots, mentions fortune, daimon, love, and necessity, those lots used by Valens and by Firmicus. And finally, in the 6th century, the Egyptian astrologer Rhetorius wrote a compendium that also contains a fair amount of lot doctrine and technique. So the use of lots continued in subsequent centuries and expanded in Arabic language astrology, but their use fell off dramatically in the 18th, 19th, and first 3/4 of the 20th century, after which there was a revival in the use of ancient techniques, and lots again became more popular, but not ubiquitous in astrological interpretation. So now I'm going to discuss a bit some examples of lot usage and some case studies that will highlight the main players in using lots and in their interpretations. And these case studies will show how lots are used in practice in various ways, and I hope demonstrate their importance in astrological interpretation. And I'm just going to throw this slide up here to give you some idea about what astrologers do in interpreting lots. Some of these are just general rules of interpretation, but some refer specifically to lots. And this little list is drawn mostly from Vettius Valens, who's a real lot fanatic. So first of all, you want to look at the zodiacal sign where the lot is, and you want to look at whether it's on an angle. Remember, I mentioned angles way back in that earlier diagram. Is it on, and is it especially the ascendant and the midheaven, which are considered the two best angles, or is it in a good place? Remember, I mentioned the place of good fortune and the place of good Daimon. Those would be considered good places for a lot to be, right? Then you look to see if there's a benefic planet in that sign, like Venus or Jupiter, or maybe a malefic planet like Mars or Saturn. And what other planets are in the sign that has the lot, right? Then you look at the ruler of that sign. Every sign has a planetary ruler. For those of you who don't know astrology, dignity in astrology is the things that make a planet how shall I put it? Operative, make it its expression strong or weak. But for our purposes, we just want to know that the planet is ruling each sign. So what's the state of that planet really is what you're trying to find. And what relationships does it have with other planets and other points in the chart? Is this ruler in a good relationship with the sect lord, which is the sun in a day chart or the moon in a night chart? And then for the lot of fortune, Valens tells us to look at the 11th place from fortune, or the sign of that place as a place of acquisition. So, you know, getting riches or money. And finally, he says, look at the angles from the lots of fortune and Daimon. And that is in effect saying that you can use the lots of fortune and Daimon as ascendants. So when we do that, we will then be able to see the manifestations of things that have to do with fortune and with soul or spiritual or mind concerns. I feel like I should ask again if anybody is in extremis here, completely lost. So are we good? Luis is nodding, so I'm hoping that means okay. Good. All right. I know I keep going on about fortune and Daimon, but they are really a special case, and I just want to say a little bit more about them before we move on to actual case studies. The lots of fortune and Daimon, as I mentioned, are mentioned in the earliest extant astrological texts that we have by Nekepso and Pedosiris. They're by far the most used lots in antiquity. In extant charts, we find a lot of fortune calculated in at least 88 of the present around 350 charts that we have evidence of, and a lot of diamond in 33 charts. And again, we're using, and especially for valens, these lots can be used as ascendants, both fortune and diamond, and places interpreted from them. And here is the quotation that I referred to earlier that is going to connect Plato with astrology, and it's by the Neoplatonic philosopher Proclus, who in his commentary on Plato's Republic specifically connects astrology with the allotments of diamond and fortune in the myth of Ur. He says, one particular cause determines the diamond and fortune, the sun and moon respectively, because the lots of diamond and fortune are found from these gods in our nativities, which is clear to those trained in astrology. So there's your smoking gun if you're looking for one. So that you in the audience today can, if you're not familiar with the meanings of the lots, which you may not be, I'll just give you a couple of little quotations about what they mean to an astrologer, and what they would have in the back of their minds as they're interpreting them in a chart. So Paulus, in his introduction to astrology, says that fortune signifies all things about the body and actions throughout life. It's indicative of acquisition, reputation, and privilege. Diamond happens to be lord of soul, character, sense, and every capacity, and sometimes cooperates in reckoning what one does. In other words, your profession or your métier. Olympiodorus, Paulus's commentator, says, well, we'll begin from the lot of fortune, since this goddess, who's more kindred to things here, has begotten increasing and lessening circumstances, for which reason she's affiliated with the moon. And the lot of fortune is often affiliated with the moon. And then after this, the lot of the good diamond, and we can get to know the character of the soul, the intentional mind and purpose from this lot, just as we learn the body and things concerning the body from fortune. And for various valens, the lots of fortune and diamond particularly, but also sometimes the lots of eros and necessity can be as important as angles. And we'll see some examples of this in the case studies, which I will turn to now, so you can see the way particular astrologers are working with this material. And I will begin simply with this. I find this a very charming little quotation from Dorotheus, who is describing the roles of the lots of diamond and fortune in nurturing and rearing a child. And I'm sure that everyone who's ever experienced a teething child can relate. So he says, look at the matters of bringing up at the lot of fortune and the lot of the demon. This is from the Arabic translation. If you find the moon with one of them or aspecting them in trine, that's a good relationship. This is a good indication in the matter of bringing up, and this is an indicator of the beauty of his face and the perfection of his limbs and the sprouting of his teeth without discomfort. You want such a child. If the moon is free from these things, say the contrary to what I said. So that's just one example of how you would interpret a lot given to us by Dorotheus. Now I'm going to return to Manilius, who wrote an astrological poem called the Astronomica. And he comes up with this idea that he calls the circle of Athla. And in this scheme, he, as I mentioned before, takes the lot of fortune and treats it as an ascendant. So here it is. The position of the lot of fortune becomes the first place. Okay, and then he assigns different designations for each of the following places. This is a rather peculiar system. It's unique to Manilius. We don't see it anywhere else. It's in his book 3, lines 96 to 169. And I should say something about what is this circle of Athla? What is Athla? Athla is the Greek word for contest. And in fact, it can have a somewhat negative connotation. It is in fact what the labors of Hercules were called, Athla. And he describes these contests as eremnosis, the Latin word eremnosis, which George Gould, the translator, renders as toilsome, burdened with great toil. This is a great Anglo-Saxon word. So clearly, we're meant to think that the life apportioned by the lot of fortune as ascendant is a difficult one. I also want to say something about Manilius's word choices for the normal places of the ascendant that are quite different from those he uses for the lot places. He emphasizes nature's fixity of the heavens in the natural system with the normal ascendant that's at the eastern horizon point. He talks about the fixed order by which the world operates and the fixing of the sky, the fixing in the sky of the zodiac and the planets that are tied to human fate. But when he talks about the lot version of the chart, he goes from using all these fixed words to words of fluidity and impermanence, as if he's acknowledging that the individual particular contribution that the lots give to each person, that he's acknowledging that. And interestingly, in these descriptions that he has for these lot places, there is in fact a connection with the 16 regions of the liver in Etruscan divination. Now, I don't have time to go any deeper into this, but this would seem to tie this lot system into another system of divination. So I find it quite interesting. So that's Manilius and the circle of Athla. And now I want to talk about Vettius Valens and his takes, more than one, on the lots, in which I will be discussing fortune and daimon and love and necessity. And for him, the lots can be as important as the places. So he's actually elevating them to the status of the places, and not just any old place, but the most important and most significant places in the chart, which are the ascendant and the midheaven, those two angles, and what he considers to be the very good places of good daimon and good fortune, and he calls them operative and active zodiac signs, meaning the place that sign encompasses. And he adds the lots of fortune, daimon, love, and necessity. So they're right at the top. They move right at the top. And I think here actually is a good time to just say a bit about these lots of love and necessity and why are they so important. I mentioned before that their formulae connect them with fortune and daimon. And in fact, their formula takes the arc between fortune and daimon and projects it from the ascendant, so that what you're getting is a double mirror image. and I'll just show you what that looks like. So here we see the lot of fortune and the lot of Daimon. The arc between them is taken to form the lot of love or eros and the lot of necessity. So we're taking this arc and going from the ascendant to get the lot of love, and taking this arc and going in this direction to form the lot of necessity. So what we have is a double mirror image, and this is why he considers them to be linked and important. And he uses them in a number of different techniques. So that's one thing that I wanted to say about Valens. He also is very fond of using the lots of fortune and Daimon as angles, just as Manilius did by placing the lot of fortune in the first place and going in lot order from that. And he says, after determining the allotted place of fortune, examine its squares, meaning the angles from it, and the rest of its relationships, just as you would for the natal angles. For the lot itself will have the power of the ascendant in life, the 10th from it, the midheaven in reputation, the 7th, the setting, the 4th, the underground, and the rest of the places will have the power of the 12 place positions. This is giving the lots quite a lot of power. He even says we have the universal ascendant and its squares are the cosmic angles, meaning the normal ascendant, right? But the lot and its squares is the natal angles. So these are peculiar to that person, and they were sort of another map that you can place on the chart to give more levels of interpretation. So this is how important they are to him. Okay, so this quotation is telling us in effect that if you use the lot of fortune as an ascendant, you look at the other angles from it in the same way you would look at the natal ascendant and its angles. And we see examples of this practice in Valens too. So let me just show you what that looks like in a quick diagram. So here we have the lot of fortune, which is going to become like the first place, right? And its 10th place is its midheaven. This is the midheaven of fortune, in this case in Cancer. The opposite place to it, because this is in Libra, it's going to be in Aries, and the opposite of the midheaven is going to be the lower culmination, or the IC of fortune. So again, he's doing exactly what Manilius did by placing fortune in a first place position and looking at the angles from that. And then, yes, so, and I also want to point out that he's very fond of using the 10th from fortune in terms of fame. Okay, so the 10th place has to do with reputation and fame. So you can use fortune in that way. And the 11th from fortune, Valens tells us, is a place of acquisition. So it has to do with how you make money. He has an example of this. Of what I'm calling a brilliant nativity, because the person was apparently quite exalted. And he gives us the positions so we can date the chart. He doesn't actually tell us where the lot of fortune and Daimon are, but we can figure them out because we know where the sun and the moon are, and we know where the ascendant is. So, so we find out that the lot of fortune is here in Leo, and the lot of Daimon is in Sagittarius. This is a day chart. As you can see, the sun is right up there in the midheaven. And he talks about, I'm not gonna read this, you can read it while I'm explaining. So he talks about why it's a brilliant nativity. And first he talks about the fact that that the Lord of Fortune is the sun, the Lord of Daimon is Jupiter. So the Lord of Fortune being in Leo, its ruler is the sun, right? And Fortune's ruler, the sun, is in the midheaven, a very good place, with another lot called the lot of exaltation. So that is really good. And the ruler of the lot of exaltation, he says, is the moon, right? And she is in a 10th place position from the lot of fortune. Okay, so if we think of this as the first, this is going to be the 10th place from that. Really good, really nice. All of this denotes the brilliance of the nativity. And he says stuff like, he was entrusted with royal offices and deemed worthy of a high priesthood. So that's all fine. However, as far as acquisition goes, things are not so rosy, because the 11th place from fortune, so if this is first, this is 12th, this is 11th place from fortune, is Gemini. And that is squared by Saturn in Pisces, which is here, and Venus in Virgo, which is here. And squares are not considered to be very helpful. So his acquisition of money is not so great. He says it was irregular and unstable, sometimes quite abundant and sometimes insufficient. So what the lots giveth with the 10th place from fortune, they taketh away with the 11th place from fortune. How are we doing for time? I'm over. I have a couple of other examples. Is it okay that we keep going? Okay, Luis says yes, so I will keep going. All right. I hope that was clear to everybody. If you have a question, go ahead and ask it. Okay. So my other example is kind of a deep dive into interpretation. And this is using a technique with the lot called perfections, which in 25 words or less, that moves a particular point in the chart 1 sign per year. And in this case, the lots of fortune and diamond are being moved. And the chart for the year in question is interpreted based on where the perfected lot falls. This particular example, Valence spends a lot of time on, sorry for the pun. And as you can see, this is the quotation that that he gives us for this particular person who was a dancer. And he's interpreting his 20th year, the year that he was 19, and the year and his 32nd year, the year when he was 31. I'm not going to read through this, but at this point I will talk a little bit about what he's saying here and why he's saying it, how he is interpreting the lots of fortune and diamond, which have been moving by perfection in the years in question. And this is the chart itself. I have marked the natal positions in black and the profected positions in blue. So when the dancer was 19, He managed to avoid permanent trouble because Venus was in the powerful first place, and Jupiter and the sun, which rule the natal lot of Daimon. Jupiter and the sun, who is the ruler of, forget that previous sentence. The sun is the ruler of the lot of exaltation, which is in Leo, right? Jupiter and the sun are in the 10th place from the lot of fortune. Okay, so that's this, the natal lot of fortune, right? All good. Mars, and because of this, they are able to prevail over Mars, who is the ruler of the natal lot of fortune, right? So the 10th place predominates over the lot, right? However, when this same set of perfections came around again, when the dancer was 31, he was not so fortunate. So now, instead of emphasizing the lot of fortune, he emphasizes the lot of Daimon. And the lot of Daimon, by perfection, has gone into a bad place, what he calls a decline, which is the 3rd place, which is ruled by Saturn, because Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn. And Saturn, although it's in a good position in the midheaven, as you can see it up here, is opposed to the acquisitive place, the 11th, from the lot of fortune, which happens to be in Aquarius. So this is the 11th from the fortune. And that's Saturn's own house. So he loses his livelihood, and with it his reputation. And furthermore, the mind, which is ruled by that same lot of Daimon, natally in Gemini and ruled by Mercury. But Mercury, unfortunately for our dancer, opposes the lot of Daimon here. Not a good position. And so he acts against his own best interests of the lot of Daimon, the dancers, which are the dancer's mental actions. His overweening pride and boasting get the better of him. And while he managed to avoid this when he was 19, by the time he is 31, it catches up with him. So it's a perfect example of pride going before a fall. And we can compare Valen's interpretation here to the general conditions that he lists for the perfected lots of fortune and Daimon. Because he says, because the lot of fortune has perfected to the ascendant and Venus is there, he says the lot of fortune handing or taking over in operative places with benefics in them or witnessing them indicates good fortune and promotion, both in actions and reputations and setting things right and achievement of expectations. However, the perfected lot is also squared by Saturn, a malefic. And he says about that, when it is witnessed by malefics, it makes the actions and reputations less and temporary, or it makes whatever they may gain for themselves subject to oppositions, dangers, or trials and insults. So he's actually using his own descriptions in his interpretations. He says the lot of Daimon perfects to a decline, but that decline does contain Jupiter, right? So he will have, as Valen has already said, discriminating and easily affected arguments and advantageous advice from friends. But the actions and reputations will be less and temporary. And furthermore, he becomes puffed up in his intellect, that's a quote, having a great amount of conceit. The fact that the ruler of the profected lot is Saturn means that he works against his interests, devising something dangerous against himself. The natal ruler of the lot can't help him because it opposes the place of the lot. That's Mercury opposing the lot of Daimon. So he has shown in this example how he intertwines the workings of the lots so that the actions of one feed on the other, and future circumstances can be foreseen in earlier events. When the dancer was 19, fortune got him out of a jam, but he didn't learn from it. And so the next round of perfections, Daimon's unfortunate position and his own mental actions, a hyper arrogance about the good things which have come to him by fortune, brought about his downfall. So that Valens uses the word paraitios here, responsible, shows that he considers the lot of Daimon as intentional and with some qualities of what we would call free will, at least in the mental sphere. So this example shows ultimately that you can lead the soul to water, but you can't make her drink. So I'm going to go very quickly through these last two little examples first about the Hermetic Lots that Paulus brings up in the 4th century. Again, it's one lot associated with each of the 7 classical planets, including the sun and the moon. And this group of lots follows the earlier grouping of fortune, Daimon, Eros, and necessity, adding 3 more lots connected to Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And we are fortunate enough to have an actual documentary chart containing these lots. This is the only extant chart we have to contain these Hermetic lots. It was discovered by Alexander Jones in 2009 from a collection in the Berlin archive that had been sitting there since 1902. It's an extremely important, what we call an elaborate horoscope, because it contains a lot of techniques, many of them discussed by Paulus in his introduction. And then this is the page that has all of the positions of the Hermetic lots on it. And for those of you who are finding it difficult to read the papyrus, believe me, it's not easy to read. Here is a translation, so you can see all of the Hermetic lots listed here by their sign, degrees, and minutes, and other information about them. Alexander Jones and I wrote up this papyrus in 2017, and it is available online. So, the afterlife of lots and a brief conclusion. So lot doctrine and the use of numerous lots expanded in the Arabic era of astrology from the end of late antiquity through the Middle Ages. Abu Mashar, the great astrologer from Balkh in present-day Afghanistan, added significantly to the philosophical and technical doctrine of lots. Lots associated with food crops became an important tool of prediction for harvests and yields. The use of lots in the Middle Ages and Renaissance entered Europe, where they were employed, for example, by the influential astrologer Guido Bonatti, but as well by lesser-known astrologers such as S. Bell, whose notebooks have been documented by our dear friend and colleague Elena Avelar in her PhD thesis and book, An Astrologer at Work in Late Medieval France. By the 17th century, only the lot of fortune remained in common use by astrologers. And even though he philosophically disavowed the lots, and specifically the lot of fortune, Johannes Kepler did in fact calculate its position in many of the charts that he made for clients, family, and friends. William Lilly, the 17th century English astrologer, used the part of fortune in assessments of wealth, both in natal and interrogatory interpretation, and in predictive techniques like directions. But basically at the end of the 17th century, the use of lots in astrology mostly came to a close, to be then rediscovered by people who are passionate about these things at the end of the 20th century. And being one of those, I thank you for listening to my presentation today. So I can unshare my screen. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, so here we are.
Thank you, Dorian. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was
Sorry I went over time. It happened.
It happens, no problem. It's more difficult when you have a room and you have to exit it. Here we have almost
Yes.
an unlimited time to discuss these things. Of course, we're not going to take too long, but I would now open for some commentaries and questions. I know we have some in the
chat.
in the chat. Yes, let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, I see Samuel had a question about the syzygies. Lots are very, yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, yes, you can actually plot this out and see that they sort of come together and move away. And it is certainly based on the cycles of the sun and moon. Was it given special consideration? Yes, I would have to say that it was in some of the examples that we see. They seem to be very fond of the lots being close together. And it's also connected with another lot that's called basis or foundation that I'm not going to get into because it's just too complicated right now. But yes, that was seem to be a good thing. But it's a function of astronomy that it happens. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay, do we have someone wants to ask another question?
Vicente? I found particularly interesting the reference to the malefic meaning of the 6th bad fortune and the 12th bad daimon. Yeah. Rulers of those houses become accidental malefics. Oh, you're getting into techniques that are going to be well beyond a lot of the people in this room, I think. And even in the computation of the Almutin and the Lord of the Geniture, these houses are strongly penalized. Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's going to happen, especially in using techniques of medieval astrology to find things like rulers of various portions of life and portions of the chart and overall rulers of the chart. Yeah. Okay.
I have a kind of more technical question that is, if it's easy to explain, do it. Otherwise, we will make a special session.
Okay.
I just wondered, when you talked about the perfection, you showed the perfection of the lot of fortune, and you showed the chart of the dancer.
Yeah.
So it was. You showed in blue the new positions of the lots, and
Yes,
I just wanted to understand how you get there, because you said something 32 years later or 31 years, and how do these 32 years correspond to the shift? I just, if this is easy to show.
Yeah, well, yeah, I realize that time constraints possibly made my intention less clear than it should have been. Yeah, so because the profections advance a point 1 sign per year, then every 12 years you repeat. Okay?
I see. I understand. Okay, the profection advance 1 sign per year.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so Valens in this particular example is actually looking at the repeat of a 12-year period where all the perfections are the same again, but interpreting it quite differently. And it almost seems like he's connecting the two different times of life together, so that the actions of the first period are then somehow linked to the actions of the later period. So it's quite interesting what he does with it. I mean, you could say, oh, well, aren't the same things going to happen, and aren't you going to react the same way? But he's more subtle than that. Yeah, does that make it clearer?
Oh, totally clear now. So it's just a modulo 12 of the sun, and
yeah,
so you get. Was it 32 years or 31 years later?
It was 31. It was 19. When he was 19 and 31, or his 20th year and his 32nd year.
All right.
Right, because when you turn 19, you're in your 20th year. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question here from Raul.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you, Dorian, for this lecture. I would like to put a question, because it's something that is difficult to me to understand since several years. You have spoken about the place of good Daimon and the lot of Daimon. Yes. And I was wondering if you know what is the relationship with the so-called ruler of the birth chart. How could we relate this with the goal to find which is the planet that is the most strong candidate to become the ruler of that, as I could say, of that incarnation of that individual? So, yes. And if you see if there is any relation, as you touched the example of the Republic, as in the Republic, we have the myth of the history of the individual before incarnating, choosing the lots to define the fate, to define the destiny of that soul during its life in Earth. So my question is about that, if you can.
Okay, these are very complicated and interesting questions. Yes, there is the historical information about this idea of finding a chart ruler that can represent the personal daimon in the chart, as in the myth of Porphyry, the Neoplatonic writer and polymath, was quite interested in this topic. And I've written an article about this called Porphyry of Tyre on the Diamond Birth and the Stars, where he links things like the myth of to astrology. So there is definitely a connection there. And there's also a technique for finding what they called in the medieval period the Lord of the Geniture, right? And so there's definitely a connection between both of those things. I don't think I can get, this is very deep astrological stuff, which I'm not sure that I can really go into more of an explanation now, but my article, if you can get a copy of that, and maybe we could talk about that, Luis, at another time, does address this question.
Okay, perhaps we can have another in the future, another talk by you on those subjects, because that will be a topic on itself.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have another question in the chat by Natalie, Gontier, who asks if the transition between places to houses, when did that happen? If you can tell us something about that.
Well, because Greek uses the word topos, which means place. In Hellenistic astrology, they were called places. I have the idea, and I am not an Arab specialist, but I have the idea that the Arabic word beit, which means house, was applied to what the Greeks would have called a topos, or a place in the astrological chart, and that it began to happen then. Because in medieval astrology, I believe they are calling them houses, aren't they, Luis?
Yes, I think so.
Yes. And I think that that is when the transition began.
Yeah,
but
I would agree.
I don't feel completely confident about this, but that's my answer for today. I hope that's helpful.
Okay. Well, is there anyone else who wants to do a question?
I've stunned you into silence.
Well, if not, going one, going twice. Okay, so okay, we also are very long on time. It was a very
I'm sorry.
No, don't be. It was quite interesting, and this topic needs its time to be explained. So I thank you very much for this, and let's hope we can come again in the future session to
Yes.
explain to us also a little bit more about this fascinating topics and this fascinating period in the history of astrology.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Obrigado.
Bye. Adeus.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.